Now, we have exclusive video right now from Kurt Haskell. You heard him on the Alex Jones Show this week. Rob Dew went up to interview him where he lives outside of Detroit earlier this week or last week. And we're going to play just a few minutes of that exclusive video now. The key witness to the underwear bomber that they're now using to legitimize the TSA's total takeover.
I'm Kurt Haskell. I'm an attorney in Michigan, and I was on the flight with the underwear bomber on Christmas Day 2009.
Passengers describe a terror attack and the arrest of a suspect who tried to blow up a plane as it landed at Metro Airport.
We heard a loud pop, then a bit of a smoke.
Sounded first like a balloon being popped.
All of a sudden, heard some screams, and flight attendants ran up and down the aisles, and
everything's crazy. People are screaming. There's fire on the plane.
So there was a lady shouting back, and she was saying things like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
At that moment, I was sure I was going to die.
And when I was at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam on Christmas Day, my wife and I were coming back from a vacation we had in Africa, and this was our connecting flight back to Detroit. And there weren't two seats together to sit at while we were waiting for our flight, so we sat by the gate on the floor playing cards. And when we were playing cards, I looked up, and what caught my eye was a pair of men walking up to the counter. And one looked like a wealthier Indian man to me, and the other looked like a poor African. I thought he was a teenager, but apparently he was a little older then. But he looked like a poor African teenager. He only had on jeans and a white t-shirt in the middle of winter. And, I thought they were an odd pair, so I just kind of watched them as we were playing cards. And they went to the counter together, and the Indian-looking man spoke, and what he said was, "This man needs to get on the flight," referring to the African teenager. But he doesn't have a passport. And then the girl working at the counter said, "Well, you have to have a passport to get on the flight." And then the Indian man said, "Well, he's from Sudan. We do this all the time." And that's an exact word-for-word quote. And she said something along the lines of, "Well, I'll have to refer you to a manager," or something like that. And I think she did something on her computer, and then she sent the two of them down a hallway, and they walked down the hallway together, which was in a restricted area. And they walked down there without an escort, and then, I quit watching at that point. At the Amsterdam airport, I didn't really notice anything that rose any suspicion with me. I saw what I did, but at the time it didn't mean anything to me. I'm just thinking, oh, here's someone that's not going to be boarding our flight. So, if you think of it, how I was looking at it at the time, it really didn't mean anything. It meant so little I didn't even tell Lori about it until it became important later on. Coming in for a landing into Detroit, and the pilot came on the loudspeaker and said, "Flight attendants, take your seats. We're going to be preparing for landing soon." And just a few seconds after that, a flight attendant walked by my seat, and I could hear a mumble, "Something smells like smoke," something along those lines. And I looked up. I had been looking at the monitor on the back of my seat to see our approach. And I looked up, and I could see smoke coming from the left side of the plane. And there was a bit of a skirmish going on. This was a plane that had two aisles, so this was occurring on the left side of the left aisle, and I was on the right aisle. So I ran up the right aisle to get a better look. And the smoke didn't last too long, and then a fire broke out, and a man was being hauled away into the first class area. There really wasn't a fight going on or anything, just someone grabbed him and hauled him away. So I didn't know at this point if it was a terrorist attack or what it was. I was more concerned about the fire that was spreading real fast. It spread to 2 seats and then the floor and then up the wall. And you know, I went back to my seat and Lori asked me what was going on. I said, the plane's on fire. And you know, we watched it as it was continuing to spread and passengers were jumping on it, patting it down. And a flight attendant grabbed the fire extinguisher and ran over and put it out. You know, maybe the whole thing lasted a minute or two. It wasn't real long, but it was enough, you know, where we thought that was it, that our plane was going to go down in flames.
The passenger aboard this plane arriving in Detroit was planning to blow up the aircraft, but the explosive device apparently failed. A Delta spokeswoman says the passenger was immediately subdued and was being questioned Friday evening. Authorities initially believed the passenger had set off firecrackers, causing some minor injuries. Flight 253 was carrying 278 passengers and was inbound to Detroit from Amsterdam.
When we landed, it was interesting for a few reasons. First of all, you know, I thought we were just going to stop, the emergency chutes were going to open, and we're all going to jump out. But that's not what happened. We landed, we taxied right up to the gate. Several officers came on board, you know, and I don't know who they're with. If they're TSA, Detroit Police, FBI, I don't really know. And they all, or a couple of them started yelling, saying, sit down and shut up, you're not getting off the plane, get it back in your seats, that kind of thing. And they all went into the first class area. And after maybe 20 minutes or so, the underwear bomber, who he's known as now, you know, obviously we didn't know who he was at that point, got escorted off in handcuffs. And he stood in the front of the left aisle for maybe 20 seconds or so, and I got a good look at him then. And that's when I made the connection that it was the same person I saw in Amsterdam before we boarded. And I turned to Lori and I said, holy cow, you know, I think I maybe have seen something important. They took him off the plane, and then there was a powder all over the place by where he sat. We got our carry-on bags, which to me I thought was another mistake. Being an attorney, I thought, you know, they're destroying a crime scene here, and not knowing if there's an accomplice, another bomb or whatever. And we all kind of trampled right through by where he was sitting, you know, right through this powder that was all over the place. Again, destroying the crime scene, but nobody seemed to care about it. And then we were taken into the terminal, and we were held in a baggage claim area that had been evacuated, and just passengers from our flight were there. And you know, we were told to stand along this wall. We couldn't make any calls. We couldn't eat anything, drink anything, text anyone, use the bathroom. We couldn't do anything. We weren't really given much information except we're told to stand here. And after about an hour or so, some bomb-sniffing dogs were brought in. And one of the dogs caught on a smell of the bag of another Indian man who was standing maybe 20 feet away from me, you know, with the group of all his passengers. So I would say most of the passengers saw this happen, not just me. And the dog sat down, and one of the officers came over to the man and took him into a side room to be interviewed. And they were in there a long time, maybe an hour. And then he came out of the room with an officer and was handcuffed, and then they took him away. At the same time, a different officer came up to the rest of us passengers and said something along these lines. I can't remember exactly word for word, but it was something like, I'm sure that you saw what just happened. You're not safe here. You know, for obvious reasons, we're moving you to a different area and out of here. And then we were all escorted out of this baggage claim area and into this long hallway where we were at for a few more hours. During this time, again, we still weren't able to use the bathroom or make calls or eat or anything like that. And after a few hours, the person I would say was the lead investigator came up and said, we now have those responsible for this in custody, those plural, not the man or him. And then he went on to say, we're going to be doing quick interviews of all the rest of you, and then you'll be free to go. and then we're escorted back into the larger area, baggage claim area, where we initially were. And then we had to stand in line to do interviews before we could leave, and that's when I told the FBI what I had witnessed in Amsterdam for the first time.
I give you part 2 of that interview. This part is about how it's a government cover-up and a false flag.
Continuing now with our breaking news coverage, new facts on the table tonight about just how hard the father of the alleged Christmas bomber tried to warn U.S. intelligence about his son.
One thing I'd like to point out is that the system worked.
And we're learning tonight more about the suspect. Let's get to Fox News' Andrea Isom. She begins our team coverage. She is live at Metropolitan Airport. Andrea?
As the hours go on, you are right. We are learning more about the suspect, and quite frankly, the details are chilling. The man, the menace, 23-year-old Abdul Mudala of Nigeria. Mudala's despicable actions were all on al-Qaeda's behalf. Sources telling Fox News his instructions were to blow up the plane over U.S. soil.
The intelligence community knew about Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab weeks ago and failed to spread word that would have put him on the no-fly list.
The father of the suspect in the Christmas incident warned U.S. officials in Africa about his son's extremist views.
That a report was prepared and it was sent on to the CIA in Langley, Virginia, CIA headquarters, but it was not disseminated to the wider intelligence community.
Obviously, when you have a father coming in and talking to the embassy about a son who's radicalized, gives the embassy the passport number, the first thing you would think is a very fast effort to see if the person's got a visa and suspend the visa.
One of the things you don't know about is the number of people that we have turned away because their name has been on the watch list or on the no-fly list.
Only my mom could, but not me and my dad, because both me and my dad are on the watch list.
Tough to believe, but 8 years later, we are still talking about connecting the dots and a failure to communicate.
Call for immediate reviews on how this guy got on the plane and how he was able to get some explosives on the plane. So we got a world to
This is a controlled patsy.
Facts are facts. You can have your own opinions, but you can't have your own facts.
When we first took off, I noticed about 10 seats ahead of us to the left-hand side, he had a camcorder, and I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe this was his first flight and was just excited. And then when the actual incident occurred, I looked up, and he was the only one standing and filming the entire thing.
You know, when we're on the plane, I didn't notice anybody filming. My understanding is that there was someone filming, but my view of his seat was blocked by the restroom. He was on the left side of the plane, I was on the right, and between us there was a restroom, so I wouldn't have been able to see him anyway. I know more about the story later on. I initially tried to contact him, the man, shortly after the flight, and I just received an email back from an attorney, you know, and not him. He wouldn't talk to me at all. So that was my initial contact with him. Now, interestingly enough, about 6 months ago, this man contacted me out of the blue. He was going to have a deposition in regards to the trial where prosecutors, FBI agents, and I think some Dutch police or someone, around 10 people were coming to interview him in Holland, where he lives. Holland, not Michigan, Holland, the country, or the Netherlands, if you will. And he called me to talk about it. So I actually got to talk to him. He doesn't speak real good English, but we had a conversation for about an hour. And this is what he told me. He said he was traveling by himself. He had just purchased a video camera of some sort, and he was filming us coming in for a landing. Now, mind you, when this started, we were at an altitude of 20,000 feet. The media reports it was 10,000 feet, but it was 20,000 feet because I know I was watching the seatback monitor when it started. So I'm not sure what exactly you could film that high other than some clouds, but anyway. So he's filming out the window, heard a commotion, he turned and started filming. He said he had video of the incident. He also said he had still pictures of the man in orange, who was the man taken into custody after we landed. He told me that the video was seized by the FBI after landing, and that he still had the still pictures of the man in orange. So I asked him to forward me copies so I could verify that it was the same man, and just for me to look at too. And he asked me why I wanted those, and I said for my own personal interest, and he said, I don't trust that you won't put them on the internet. I'm going to keep them for my own personal safety. Make of that what you will. I don't know. That's his statement. He didn't seem to be anything other than what he's claiming. From what I could tell, he didn't seem to be lying to me, but you know, make up your own mind whether that story's credible or not. The video has never been released. No video of anything in this case has been released to anyone other than the prosecutors, the judge, and the underwear bomber himself. There is a protective order in the case indicating that any attorney involved in the case cannot speak about what evidence there is. I have a suspicion that Anthony Chambers has some of the videos, maybe not the video on the plane, but I have a strong suspicion that he has the airport security video from Amsterdam. There's never been any picture or video of the underwear bomber released going through security or at the airport or anything. He didn't go through security. He was escorted around security. And actually, shortly after this incident, there was an article. It's from the Herald Scotland, December 28th, 2009, and this is a really important article, and this is the only paper to ever report on this, and nobody talks about it. For this one sentence, the military police have already said Abdul Muttalib did not go through passport control at Schiphol when he arrived from Lagos. Okay, they admit he didn't go through passport control, but what they don't tell you here is that passport control and security are in the same line at Schiphol. So if you're not going through passport control, you're not going through security. So there's an omission here. Abdul Muttalib not only did not have his passport checked, but he didn't go through security at all. They leave out the fact that he was escorted, but obviously this is the reason no one else is reporting on this article or talking about it. But again, here we have an admission. The underwear bomber did not go through passport control at Schiphol Airport, and passport control is the same line as security, so therefore 2 + 2 means he didn't go through security. So he didn't go through security. So therefore there are no pictures possible of him going through security because he didn't go through it. The FBI contacted Lori and I on December 28th, 2009. So 3 days after this happened, they visited our office here in Detroit, south of Detroit. The first thing I asked them was, hey, you know, I can help you in the investigation. I saw the accomplice at the Amsterdam airport. Wouldn't it be wise to show me the video from the airport or some still pictures so I can identify him? And the two agents, and they're two different agents this time, they kind of did like a half head turn near each other and kind of did like a chuckle under their breath. And that was right at the start of the interview, and it raised red flags with me right away. There was no response to, you know, we don't have the video at this time, or we don't think you should see it. Nothing. No response at all. They then proceeded to ask me the story again, which I told them the story again. They showed me a series of around 10 pictures, and I looked through them. The first 8, I said, I have no idea who these people are. The next 2 were of the underwear bomber, and I got the impression that they were trying to confuse me to destroy my credibility, maybe? I don't know. It was rather strange, but none of the man in orange and none of the man in tan suit that escorted the bomber at the Amsterdam airport. So it's kind of strange. Pretty early on, within a few days anyway, that there's something really weird going on, maybe a cover-up, because I had the FBI agents come to my office on December 28th, not even wanting to talk about the man in the tan suit that helped the bomber at Schiphol Airport, which to me was a huge red flag, because as far as I know, myself and only one other person saw him. The one other person hasn't been willing to talk about it. So it would make sense that the government would want to talk to the eyewitness and have the eyewitness identify the man. And when they didn't do that, being a lawyer, it started really raising red flags with me, number one. Then number two, in regards to the man in orange who was taken into custody after we landed, you see, the government couldn't say he didn't exist because he was taken away from a group of all of us passengers. And several other passengers saw this, so they had to lie and cover up who he was. They couldn't say he didn't exist like they tried to do with the man in the tan suit. So they started telling lies about this man. First of all, they said he didn't exist, and that didn't fly because several passengers saw him. It wasn't just me this time. And then they told 5 other lies.
After we had been there for about an hour, all the time with our carry-on bags, 3 bomb-sniffing dogs were brought in. One of them sat down by the bag that was brought in by the man in orange. He had an orange. He appeared to be of Indian or Pakistani or some similar descent, maybe around age 30. He was walked back to a room, not in handcuffs. He went in the door. He was in there approximately an hour. When he came out, he was handcuffed, taken away. An FBI officer came up to the group of the rest of us passengers and said the following, which is not exact but close. You're being moved to another area. It's not safe here. I'm sure all of you saw what just happened and can figure out why you're being moved.
We were taken to a customs area, and they brought bomb dogs in, checked all the luggage with that. Another person was taken aside and handcuffed and brought out, and we were moved into another room for safety reasons, they told us.
My story on this has been the same all along, and the FBI now has 5 versions of their story, which I clearly lay out with the time period and with each version, and they're not credible. There is absolutely no excuse for the reason why. Number one, we were left on the plane for 20 minutes, not knowing if there was another bomb there. Number 2, security allowing us to take our carry-on bags off the plane, and we stood there with all of our bags together for an hour until the bomb-sniffing dogs arrived. And then, after they found one, well, then we're moved to another area, and now they don't want to talk about the man who was taken away.
You were there. They didn't stop him for immigration violations. The dog went over and sat down in front of his bag. The alert for explosives.
Right. Exactly.
Unless this is a passport-sniffing dog. This is a huge story, one of the biggest out there. The FBI is on this full time. They know what's going on. Why are they being dishonest? And how do we investigate this when the investigators themselves are engaged in clear obstruction of the truth?
I don't know how else to take it. It's either utter incompetence or intentionally hiding something, and I don't know how to take it.
I came out to the media and I said, look, that's not possible. These were bomb-sniffing dogs, not agricultural sniffing dogs. And this went on 5 times, and then they finally quit talking about him and gave up. But they kept changing their story about him. Obviously it would be easier for them to say, like they did the man in tan suit, that he just didn't exist, but they couldn't do that because there were so many witnesses. So that's how they handled that man. But eventually they just gave up on even talking about him. Interestingly enough, at the end of January 2010, when this case was about a month old, well, a little earlier on, we had Obama come out and say, hey, this was just a series of mistakes that we made, and we need to beef up our security procedures or what have you. But then recently after that, we had 2 important things at the end of January 2010. One was an ABC News article by Brian Ross, where he came out and said, yeah, this man in tan suit that was witnessed by passengers, he said passengers, but really it was just me. We're looking into this guy, and we think he actually helped the underwear bomber so that he wouldn't get cold feet. They didn't go so far as to admit what I had been saying, that that would have been impossible, that he was Al-Qaeda, because he went to the desk and said, we do this all the time. And then he had enough authority to walk down this hallway in a secure area and talk to the manager and get the man on the flight. So obviously Al-Qaeda couldn't do that. But they did admit the existence of the man in this article. So to me, that was a big story, because it was not only the first time they admitted his existence, but they've never admitted his existence after that. But at least we have it once detailed. Not only that, but it's by ABC News, so fairly credible media, at least to some. But later in January 2010, we had hearings in Congress on this, where we had Undersecretary of State Patrick Kennedy come out, and if you watch the video of him, it's pretty telling that he's trying to cover up something and not tell the truth. He's squirming in his chair and seems really uncomfortable answering the questions. And this video is all over the internet if you want to Google it and look at it. But what he said is basically, we knew Abdul Muttalib was a terrorist. We wanted to stop him from coming in the country and revoke his visa.
There have been numerous cases where our unilateral and uncoordinated revocation of a visa would have disrupted important investigations that were underway by one of our national security partners. They had the individual under investigation, and our revocation action would have disclosed U.S. government's interest in that individual and ended our colleagues' ability, such as the FBI, to pursue the case quietly and to identify terrorist plans and co-conspirators.
But we had a request from an intelligence agency, and he didn't say which one. What he said was, we'll talk about it in closed session. And he said we had a request from an intelligence agency that they're tracking Abdul Muttalib. They want to let him into the U.S. to follow him and to catch bigger fish. And they honored that request in order to let whatever intelligence agency do their business, so that they wouldn't knock out one lone soldier in the war on terror, and they could essentially follow him in the U.S. and catch accomplices. So that's what they admitted to. But Patrick Kennedy went on to say there's more to this, we need to talk about it in closed session, and that's kind of where it ended. So obviously I don't believe that for a minute. What I believe through, and what's been shown through the evidence, I believe, is that an intelligence agency gave Abdul Muttalib an intentionally defective bomb and put him on the plane to stage a fake terrorist attack. So those two things early on raised a lot of red flags with me, and then because of that, I just started paying attention to every single detail in this case, going to all the court hearings, and it's just been one contradiction after another, one lie after another, the media not wanting to report on things, and it's just, to me, it's a very, very obvious staged event.
And that was our exclusive interview with Kurt Haskell, witness and outspoken critic of the entire fraudulent underwear bomber case, another false flag set up to enslave us and force us through body scanners, shut down our travel. But that was only part two. We have another part coming up. Of course, it'll all be up for our great Prison Planet subscribers later. But now, of course, we turn to our quote of the day. Coming up after the break is, of course, none other than Sheriff Richard Mack. It's going to be a great interview. Such a great guy, a constitutionalist, can't go wrong. He's going to run actually in Congress against some of these unconstitutional monsters who've been in office for decades, vote for NDAA, internet control bills, everything. Anyway, our quote is from Arnold J. Toynbee. There's another Arnold Toynbee as well, the elder. This Toynbee was 1889 to 1975 lifespan. He was actually the first president of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the public branch off that is the sister organization to the Council on Foreign Relations, all coming from the Rhodes, Cecil Rhodes Secret Society that steers so much of our modern day, all based on that Jesuit model of secret societies, based on that Illuminati model of secret societies, always working in secret. And here's that quote from Professor Arnold Toynbee, best known for his 12-volume series, A Study of History. We are presently working discreetly with all our might to wrest this mysterious force called sovereignty out of the clutches of the local nation states of the world. That's right, they want to destroy sovereignty. That quote's from 1931. You've heard the other quotes, the founding quote of the CFR about how they want to undermine, circumvent, destroy national sovereignty, and all the other players that are part of the system. Bilderberg, again, is a branch from the Cecil Rhodes Secret Society, and it's just crazy. Crazy what these people are involved in. We're going to continue to expose them and stop them. We have no other choice. This is our future. This is our lives. This is our right. We have a right to the life, to our lives, to our pursuit of happiness, and that's just the way it is. We're never going to stop. We'll be back after this break. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Of course, Alex will be speaking this Sunday at the High Lie in Orlando, Florida. It's sold out, but you'll be able to see it later on the web if you're not able to attend, as well as the speaking engagement last week in Dallas, Texas. So thanks for watching, and we'll be back with Sheriff Richard Mack.